go write a book. Welcome to the Supper Club. My name is Joe Fresta, and I'll be your host. The Supper Club, brought to you by
Mercy, transforming the health of our communities.
Kuna Food Service, a family-owned tradition since 1918. Lordo's Diamonds, your family jeweler for life. Oliva on the Hill. Fresta Limoncello. Keep sipping, my friends.
Ackerman Toyota, the #1 St. Louis Toyota dealer in volume sales back-to-back years 2023 and 2024. Thank you, St. Louis.
Welcome again to another episode of the Supper Club. I'm Joe Fresta. I'll be your host, sponsored by Mercy and Kuna Food Service. Today we have a very special guest, a member of the first family of St. Louis, the Busch family, great-grandson of Adolphus Busch, grandson of August Busch Sr.,
Jr.,
and son of August Gussie Busch Jr.
Actually,
Correct.
you got it right. You're better than I am, Joe. How do you remember all that? I can't even remember it all.
I tried to go through
That's
that
so
family
darn
tree, brother.
Good job.
Anyway, man, it's great to have
That's
you,
right.
man. You
Well,
know,
thank
you've
you for having
become
me.
a good friend over the last several years.
You
and,
bet, Joe. It's great to
I
be
want to
with
thank
you.
you to doing the show.
It's such a pleasure to be with you, man. I love your history and where you
Yeah.
come from with the pasta house companies and
Yeah,
how
yeah.
your dad got together with his partners and some great people in St. Louis and they grinded it out and they made it happen, man, with
Yeah.
those pasta house companies
Yeah.
and I just think that's a great story also. And I just read his book.
Yeah,
The House That Pasta Built, right?
Yeah.
And it was amazing. So, but thank you very much for having me on. It's
Yeah,
a pleasure to be
and
here.
you wrote a book as well,
I
talking
did.
about your history, which
Yep.
is just really fascinating.
Yep,
And,
Family Reigns. If you haven't read it yet, you ought to go out and check it out. It's the first book ever written by a Busch family member that it was that's been out there, on the shelves now, and you can buy it wherever books are sold. So it's the first book ever published by a Busch family member, and it really takes you back to my history, where when my great grandfather Adolphus Busch came to the United States and met Lily Anheuser, and her father had a failing business in the city of St. Louis, and it was a beer business, and he couldn't make it work, so he was either going to shut it down or sell it.
Right.
So he decided to give it to his then son-in-law,
Sure.
Adolphus, and Adolphus said, "I'll run it." And through hard work, determination, and innovation, he was able to grow it to be the most successful beer company ever. And
Just
so
wonderful.
it's just an amazing
it's a
story.
tremendous
And
story. Yeah.
and I can and I was around when I was growing up under my father, who was leading the brewery at the time, August Busch Jr.
Yeah.
And I got to see him. He had just bought the St. Louis Cardinals not too long after I was born, or before I was born, I mean. And he started opening up breweries around the United States. I think he opened up 9 more breweries.
Wow.
The St. Louis brewery was the first brewery. Then he opened up 9 more. And around those breweries, he put the theme parks in a lot of them.
Right.
Busch Gardens. And, his marketing understanding was incredible. I mean, he knew that if you could get people to come out and enjoy themselves as families, with family and friends, and have a good time and a good experience, and let them see the Budweiser signs everywhere,
Yeah.
and of course sampling Budweiser was always something that he did, then you could hook them for life.
Yeah.
And so what was a kid going to do when they
they
were
get older,
able to?
it's the old
to
adage,
drink,
isn't
right?
it?
They were going to grab a Budweiser.
They
right away
remember
'cause
those
they remembered
memories
those
of being
days.
with their family and seeing the Busch beer branding, the Budweiser branding, and whatever else they would have around the parks.
Exactly.
And they retain that.
That's
and,
for sure.
and kids are like sponges; they remember everything.
Yeah,
And
it's
so you teach them to say yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir. They're going to do it when they grow up as adults
right.
as well, and probably crack open a Budweiser.
Exactly.
Right?
So I talk about when I grew up on Grant's Farm. That
Yeah.
was the first park he opened.
Yeah.
He opened up his home, which my grandfather bought back at the turn of the 20th century, back in the early 1900s.
Yeah.
Of course, Ulysses S. Grant, the former
Sure.
president, has a lot of history and ties to
absolutely.
Grant's Farm. And he opened that up because Red Shandy's a great baseball player for the Cardinals.
Number 2.
Yes, exactly. His wife, he was taking coaching, and coaching was the four-in-hand of horses on the wagon, and he was taking him through the deer park at Grant's Farm, the wives of the Cardinals, after he had just bought the Cardinals. And so he bought the Cardinals in 1953, and Red Shandy's wife said, you should open up this place. It's beautiful. Open it to the public. Let them drink some Budweiser and enjoy themselves, and it'll be great marketing.
So and this was the redhead's idea.
This was the redhead's wife's idea.
Yeah, redhead's wife idea.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it was. It's been amazing. And then I grew up there on Grant's Farm, you know, and so I talk about what it was like growing up, and you know, there were ups and there were downs, just like every family goes through. There were a lot of great times, a lot of tough times too, but that's how things go, of course. And you know, and it's just the fact that this company stayed in our family. And was run by a Busch for 5 generations. You know, it's pretty good because I think most family businesses last 2 or 3 generations. And then they end. But this one lasted 5 generations, and so I'm very proud of that. And then of course it was taken over in 2008. And you know, so the rest is history. But I kept it going, you know, with our beer business when we had Kräftig out there. The beer. And now we've got our brewery out there in Defiance, Missouri, Busch Family Farms.
Wonderful place. I've been there. I go there a lot, as you know, and just kind of, it's a great, you know, I live on the hill, so it's a great, nice drive. Gets my mind off things and just kind of go out in the country and come out there. It's just a quiet place. Of course, there's people around and kids playing in the grass and whatnot. It's kind of a low-key thing. You kind of replicated Grant's Farm with a lot of the animals and whatnot, Clydesdales, and you don't have any elephants yet, though, do you?
No elephants. I'm working on that. You know, it's hard to get elephants these days.
Maybe get a Tessie Jr.?
Oh, yeah, you read the book.
Oh, absolutely.
So you know about old Tessie.
Oh, let me tell you something. It's a great book. It's a great read, and I call it a page turner. There's only one other page turner book I've ever read, and that was Da Vinci Code.
Oh, really?
And your book.
Yeah, that was a great book too.
Yeah, it's just it's fascinating. And let's go back. I mean, you described growing up on Grant's Farm like Camelot. Describe those earlier days as a young boy. You know, helping out. You would go out and help the workers out. Wouldn't you like help out in the concession stands and help some of the animal trainers and whatnot? Talk a little bit about that in your young years on the farm.
Yeah, you know, growing up on Grant's Farm, it was cool, and my mother and father expected us to work. So me and my brothers and sisters, we built a pretty good work ethic growing up there on Grant's Farm. There was always, on a farm, there's always something to do. But on this farm especially, because we were open to the public for 7 or 8 months out of the year, there was always maintenance, always keeping the place looking beautiful, always adding something new to it, and then of course taking care of all the animals.
Yeah, right.
So my dad made it to I think he went to the 6th grade. And then from there on, he went to work with his father down at the brewery, and he learned every department at the brewery, and he learned it backward and forward. And you know, he was expected to work, clean out the beer barrels and the vats and all the different things, and he had to do the manual stuff, and he had to pretty much walk in the employees' shoes to really understand what they were doing. And I think that's one of the reasons the company was so successful, because each generation that was built, there was built a really good work ethic and a really good understanding for what the employee was doing at the business. And so it was the same thing with Grant's Farm. You know, school wasn't that important to Dad and to Mom either, really. It was more like, okay, son, what'd you do when you came home from school? Did you work? What'd you do on the weekends? Not about, did you crack your books open? Did you?
How did you do on that test?
Yeah, how did you do it?
Where's your report
didn't even know
card?
if I had a test. No, that's the way it was. And you know, but what I was able to do is I was able to learn about animals, and I was able to work with the employees there on the farm. And you know, we had to actually outwork the employees on the farm, or try to outwork them. There was a couple guys you couldn't outwork because they were so tough. But you had to work your butt off because you know, of who we were. So we had to be even more on the ball. And But it was just a great experience growing up there, working with the employees, and I became and I talk about it in the book. Some of my best friends and some of my mentors, they were like my dad. A couple of these guys, because my dad was away a lot working, and he was traveling a lot and doing things, and so they kind of took us under their wing. Some of these employees, and we were just so close to them. Great people, and. But got to work with them and the animals, and then I learned how to train elephants and work with chimps and all kinds of animals, and it was just amazing to be able to do that. But I tell the story about why I fell in love with the elephant, as a kid. I think I was 10 years old.
And she was a baby, right?
She wasn't that much of a baby. She was probably about, we had babies there, but Tessie was probably about, let me just think, going back, she was probably about 15 or 20, so she was a pretty big elephant.
Okay.
But I was working with the elephant trainer, so what would happen was, in the spring of the year, right before we would open to the public, we would send a truck down to Busch Gardens in Tampa, Florida.
Okay.
And we would pick up a couple elephants, 2 or 3 elephants, and we would ship them back to Grant's Farm for the summer season at Grant's Farm, so that they could do shows and perform for the public and at Grant's Farm. So I worked one summer very closely because I was intrigued by the elephants with the elephant trainer. And I became very close to this one elephant, Tessie. And Tessie and I mean, it was like she and I were best friends. She would put her trunk around me and hold me close to her.
They're smart.
They were so smart.
I mean, what they say about them is really the truth. You lived it.
Correct.
And I want to stop you right there. I mean, I don't think, from what I know about you, I don't think it was like work for you as a kid. I think you got up every morning and looked forward to going and hanging out. You didn't have to, wake you up twice. I would imagine you were like, you had a way with these animals. You loved doing it.
Yep.
Like your mother. Your mother had a way with animals. Talk about that a little bit.
Oh, you got a good memory of that book. No, my mother definitely had a way with animals. They came
great
to
with
her.
Horses.
They would just. And she was great with all the animals at Grant's Farm. We had in the deer park. We have, and I'm sure they're still there. I haven't been at Grant's Farm in a long time, but we got the elk and we've got the English stag, and all different types of deer and all different types of animals. But one day, Mom and Dad were coaching through the deer park, which they did pretty much every afternoon during the spring, summer, and fall.
Your dad would come home from the brewery and honk the horn and.
Yes.
And announce his arrival.
And
you guys had to be ready to go, didn't you? You had to be back at the house?
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
Yeah, it's neat.
And they got on the coach and they went out into the deer park, and they were driving through the deer park, and they noticed a baby stag that had just been born.
Oh, wow.
A little baby English stag.
Okay.
And they came back every day thereafter, and they noticed the mom didn't come back to this baby, and it was getting a little bit skinny and didn't look so healthy.
Right.
So Dad said, we need to bring it in, and we need to bottle feed it. So they brought it in, and so Mom took care of it. She bottle fed this deer. And next thing you know, the deer is following her everywhere.
No
and
kidding.
Everywhere she goes, the deer is with her. And they even go out to our farm. We had a farm in St. Peters, Missouri.
Yeah.
And she took him out there with her. And he became bigger, and he grew his big antlers out, and he became protective of her.
Really?
Yeah, and he didn't want anybody messing with her. So it was like,
your mom
she's mine, and nobody messes with her.
She was his girl.
Exactly.
Yeah, isn't that something?
So they tried to get rid. They turned them loose because we had a big farm out in St. Peters at Bellow Farms.
Bellow Farm,
exactly. They turned them loose out there, and they drove back to Grant's Farm.
Yeah.
And 2 or 3 days later, the doggone stag, his name was Ike because Eisenhower was the president at the time.
Oh, really?
Ike.
Yeah.
So they named him Ike. My mom named him Ike. And 2 or 3 days later, that stag ended up back at Grant's Farm. So that means he had to travel 45 miles, go over the Missouri River, swim the Missouri River to get back to Grant's Farm. He had that kind of radar. Those deer had that kind of radar system in their head to find my mom again.
Because they probably trailered him or trucked him out there.
Exactly.
It isn't like he walked out there and remembered how he got there.
Right.
Isn't that amazing?
Oh, it's just amazing.
Again, talk about the elephants, how smart they are.
Yeah. But I can't. I don't want to tell you about the ending of of Ike and what happened at the end. But y'all have to read the book. But the ending is really amazing. What how that all ended with Ike. But yeah, I mean it was a great experience. It kept us all grounded.
Yeah.
You know. Through everything. I mean, we were so lucky. We got to ride on. First, we had a private railroad car.
Yeah,
that
talk
we would
about
ride
that.
Down
that you would take to
Florida
spring training every year.
Yeah, the spring training.
Yeah, the rail car.
The rail car. So it was called the Adolphus.
Uh-huh.
It was a big rail car. We would hook up to the back of the passenger train. So this
Right.
is in the early 60s.
Sure.
And we would hook up to the back of the passenger train. So we were like the caboose of the train.
Okay.
And for 2 nights and about a day and a half, it would take us to get down to Tampa, Florida.
Yeah.
And I just remember, you know, I was really young then, but I remember riding down to Tampa on the train and how great that was.
Oh, I'll bet.
And we would go down there. We had a house down there because that's where the Cardinals, you're right, that's where the Cardinals had spring training, was in St. Petersburg back in those days. Now it's in Jupiter, but that was back in... then it was in St. Petersburg. Mm-hmm. And, you know, so we'd take the train down there, and then we had a beautiful yacht down there that the company owned called the A and Eagle. And we would take the A and Eagle over to watch the games from our St. Petersburg house over to the to Al Lang Stadium to watch the spring baseball games. And, you know, and then the train started getting a little late. My dad was a little late for meetings and getting to where he needed to go. And so... even though he didn't like to fly, they talked him into buying a plane for the company.
Yeah.
So I remember getting the first plane. It was a Gulfstream. It had propellers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, propeller on each side because they didn't have jets at that time for the private planes.
Yeah.
And then we went from that to a Falcon jet, the jet.
Yeah.
So I remember it used to take 2 days to get down there. Then it took 5 hours. Now it took 2.5 hours.
Right.
Yeah. So it just kept getting quicker.
But you'd take the train to Busch Gardens in Tampa too, though, right?
That's where the train would drop us off. So I was too young. I'm too young to remember because I think that all ended in like 1964 or something like that before we went to the planes. But I'm too young to remember. I just kind of remember that the train would stop, and then another engine would connect to us, just to our car,
right,
and then would take us from the train station over to Busch Gardens
rest of the way.
And drop us off at Busch Gardens. Exactly. So that's how that worked. But those are. But anyway, you know, growing up on Grant's Farm, did we feel like we were better than anybody, or did we feel like we, you know, because we had all this?
They were your buddies.
They were our buddies.
All
we grew up to be regular people.
You were your friends.
Exactly.
Let me ask you this: you spent a lot of time on the farm, but did your dad ever just say, "Come on, Billy, we're going down to the brewery today"? Did he take you down there with him? Take you to work ever? Or
it's funny you say that.
No,
he never really
took me.
He never really took me to work. I think I might have went to work 2 times with him.
Yeah.
Because of the train. I love the train so much. Dad had bought, or maybe his father had bought, Manufacturers Railway.
Okay.
He was they were kind of like the Jeff Bezos of today.
Right.
You know, everything that touched the beer business, whether it was transportation like the railroad,
you're right,
whether it was glass for packaging, cardboard, banking, so many different things.
So many things.
We owned. The company owned. So just so
the
you know,
things around the business,
you had
incremental type businesses.
Exactly. So you didn't have to count on somebody else to run it and owning it, because just think of the transportation, for instance, shut down on you,
right?
And you couldn't control that,
right?
I mean, it shoots your beer business down. So you have to always make sure you're distributing your beer, and so he got involved in so many things. But what was your question again? I'm sorry, I was just thinking.
Well, just about. Did your dad ever bring you? You say, "Hey, Billy, let's go to work. Let's go down to the brewery." But I want to sashay into another part.
But I will say, the only time I went down there, I asked Dad. I said, "Dad, I want to ride on a train engine."
Okay.
And so he took
down
me
there.
Yeah, down there. So he took me down. He said, "You can ride." That's what I was getting at. You can ride on the Manufacturer Railway train.
Around the brewery.
Around the brewery. So I got to jump on the engine and ride around the brewery, and went up to his office for a few minutes and went home. So that was probably the only time I was there.
Yeah.
Or maybe one other time.
Yeah. Now your dad, was it your father that helped come up with he came up with the refrigeration rail
That
car?
was actually my great-grandfather.
Your great-grandfather.
That was Adolphus. So not only did he come up with the refrigeration, so that meant he could now transport beer to further off places,
Right.
because back in those days, beer was mainly local. The breweries were just local to their area,
Right.
maybe a 10-mile radius or something like that, as far as a horse and wagon could deliver the beer.
Right.
But later on, he actually came up with a way to keep the beer cold from like here to down to Texas, because Texas was one of the first places they went to distribute Budweiser from here.
Yeah.
And it made sense because they didn't have to, there was a tariff if you cross over the river. So if you stayed on this side of the river, on our side of the river, you just went down to the southwest and down to Texas, and you didn't have to pay that tariff. That went away later on. But until then, they used to put ice houses along the railroad tracks, and the train would stop, and then they could put more ice into the refrigeration cars to keep the products cold, like beer. And so the beer needed to stay cold. And then he ended up he learned about refrigeration, and he was the one that first came up with the refrigerated railroad car.
That was a game changer.
A game changer.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the other thing that was a game changer was pasteurization. So he actually worked with Louis Pasteur of France to understand how to pasteurize his beer. So they started pasteurizing the beer. They they came up with the refrigeration process and did that. And now they could expand into all parts of the country. So they moved everywhere, and that's what made them so innovative, and that's what made the company grow so much. Plus, they had a great product.
And then, of course, your dad opened up a number of different breweries around the country, right?
Yes.
And they started having all these distribution areas where they made the product.
Yes, exactly.
Let's hold that thought. We'll be right back at the Supper Club with Billy Busch.
Kuna Food Service, providing quality food to people across the Midwest, is part of our rich history at Kuna because food brings people together. We specialize in having a large variety of food products and food supplies, catering to an array of businesses that turn to us. Kuna Food Service, a family-owned tradition since 1918.
For dinner and pick her up from soccer practice. Take a number.
Nobody likes to wait. Mercy is eliminating the wait for great health care. Our online tools mean you can get the care you need now. Mercy Now. More of what you need now.
Oliva on the Hill. It's Italy in the city. With exquisite old world charm, this ideal setting is perfect for your next special event, wedding, just having lunch, or enjoying Wine Down Wednesday and the Antique Market. Check it out, olivaonthehill.com. Lordo's Diamonds, your family's jeweler for life. Family owned and operated for over 70 years, specializing in engagement rings, fashion jewelry, gemstones, and in-house jewelry repair. Relaxed, friendly atmosphere, competitive pricing, and a selection second to none. Conveniently located just west of the Galleria on Clayton Road. Lordo's Diamonds, your family's jeweler for life. LordosDiamonds.com. Joe Fresta for Fresta Limoncello. My handcrafted small batch citrus liqueur is perfect for sipping or pouring in a cocktail. All natural, gluten-free, Fresta Limoncello is sold at Schnucks, Dierberg's, Straub's, Total Wine, and local restaurants. Fresta Limoncello. Keep sipping, my friends.
Welcome back to Supper Club. We're here with Billy Busch, author of Billy Busch, Family Reigns, and we were just talking about your dad flourishing the company now, opening up all the different breweries around the country and expanding. And I wanted to ask you, I mean, you were 5 of 7 kids.
Yes,
of course,
5th of 7.
7, and then your dad was married twice previously, and he had 4 other children. Was it kind of difficult to have kind of a real solid relationship with your dad? Because I know he was so busy. He had other children, this, that, and everything. Did you guys get to bond much, or was it just when he'd get home from work, have dinner, and of course he had dinner with all 7 of you?
You know, I will say my mom kept us together. She did everything she could to make sure everybody.
She was the rock.
Yeah, she was the rock.
Yeah.
She really was. But Dad was very busy. You know, Dad was he was 60 when I was born.
Yeah.
And he married my mom. He was 50, and my mom was 22, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, they had a 28-year difference in age.
Yeah. Wow.
So, but Dad, he was great about coming home and taking us out on the farm.
Yeah.
And making sure that we were tending to the farm and to all the chores that the farm recommended.
He'd check up on you guys.
Made us keep up on,
Yeah.
He would check up on us, and you know, and like on a Saturday morning, he'd always be up early because the first thing he'd want to do, because he'd been working at the brewery all week or traveling, he would want to go out on the farm and see the farm.
Yeah.
And he would get up very early to do that, and of course he'd make sure we were up. So he would say, "Get them up, get them up. I want to, you know, then
Let's
and
go
out with them." So we'd either jump, you know, we'd get up and we'd jump on the horses, or you know, or ride on the wagon or whatever it was to check the farm.
Yeah.
And so Dad kept us together, and you know, he loved to hunt. He loved to be out on the farm.
His your grandfather liked to hunt too, didn't he?
He sure did.
Yeah.
Big hunters. He actually bought the farm in St. Peters, Missouri for duck hunting.
Oh, okay.
It was a great duck hunting farm.
Yeah.
My grandfather did. But Dad loved to be out with us, and he loved. The first duck I ever shot was with my dad.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
how old were you?
I was like 11 years old, maybe 12, something like that.
See, that's a memory you'll never forget. Right?
Oh, I'll never forget that one. I'll never forget it. I don't know why, but I was
just
sick
the
that
two
day.
of you.
And I was not feeling good.
Oh, really?
I'll never forget. Yeah, for some reason, I think I had a little touch of the flu or something. But Dad said, "No, I want to take you out and get you your first duck, son."
Oh, wow.
So I wasn't going to let being sick stop me. I had to go out there with him, and sure enough, daggum duck lands on the water in front of us. He goes, shoot it. I go, "Dad," "that's not very sporty. It's sitting there on the water." "I don't give a damn. Shoot it." So I shot it. He goes, "I'm going to mount that one for you, son." You know, put him behind glass.
First one.
The first one. Then another one flew in, and I was able to shoot that one in the air.
Oh, right.
And I said, "Dad, would you mount that one? I have a better memory of killing that one on the air and not on the water."
You called him mulligan. So let's do a do-over.
That's right, exactly. But you know, being out on the farm, Dad was great about that, and he was always making sure that we were getting projects done, and you know, whether it was cleaning the lakes, draining the lakes and cleaning them, and saving all the fish and putting them in his tank or something.
Really?
And then before you know, we clean out the lake, and then hopefully a lot of them would live, and you'd put them back in the lake, restock the lake with them. He would do that. We'd do that in the summertime. We were always getting into different projects there on the farms.
Absolutely.
And it was cool. And then what was also really fun was when Dad and Mom would take us with them to like Busch Gardens in Tampa. And we would get on the golf cart and we would ride around Busch Gardens as he was inspecting everything.
Okay.
And we would get to go in with the lions, and we would get to go in with the chimps.
Oh, boy.
And the elephants, of course. And we would get the first, you know, right up views and right up next to them to see them in their habitat there. And it was really cool. And then my father, you're in the restaurant business, of course. My father had a restaurant built at Busch Gardens on the African veldt there.
Okay.
Overlooking all the animals, the giraffes and the wildebeest and the zebra and what have you out there on the African veldt. And it was a replica. My mom was in the restaurant business, and her family was in the restaurant business. Her mom and dad
in Switzerland.
And they started the old Swiss House.
Wow!
And the restaunt they built in at Busch Gardens was a replica of the old Swiss House restaurant.
Really?
Yeah.
Now let me ask you. I'm going to switch houses on you.
Okay.
The big house, was that a replica of a house somewhere in Europe?
No,
it wasn't.
That wasn't.
Okay.
My grandfather had that house built, and it's basically after the French
Chateau. Okay.
architecture, right?
Wow. So they just took some of that.
Yeah, a lot of that
Those
that it
ideas.
was built was also shipped from Europe.
Oh, really?
Yeah, here to St.
Wow.
Louis. Yeah.
Wow.
And I think they had at one point 200 people working on building that house.
Putting it all.
Yeah, it's a heck of a house.
How long did it take them to build it? Do you know?
A few years, but I'm
Yeah.
not exactly sure how many
Yeah.
days exactly.
Yeah.
But several years, and he built the Barnhof area first up
Yeah,
there,
yeah,
which
yeah.
the architecture up there is
Right,
incredible
in itself.
And then he had
Yeah.
that house built, and
that's
he knew
great.
that he needed a big house because at that point he knew he was going to be taking over Anheuser-Busch someday,
Right.
and he would need to have an area to enjoy with his friends
Again,
and
entertain.
people, and entertain.
He was
with
in the
others.
entertainment business.
Exactly.
I mean, your dad was really. I used to read about him going into bars, taverns, and just sitting down with people and buying them a beer and Budweiser, talking with the folks, and he loved doing that as part of that whole marketing thing.
Exactly.
With the Clydesdales and all these different things, Busch Gardens, Grant's Farm, all about entertainment.
Yes.
And the restaurant.
And that's the thing. Yeah, I mean that's what made him such a great leader and so
Yeah.
successful at the brewery was the fact and really if you look back during his tenure, he started at running Anheuser-Busch in
Sure.
1946. His brother had just died. His older brother had just died.
Yeah.
He had been running the company
Sure.
after their father had died back in
Okay.
1934. And his brother died in 1946. He took it over. They were at about 3 million barrels at that time in sales.
Wow.
When he walked away from it in didn't necessarily walk away from it, you got to read the book. In 1975 or 74 was it? It was 1975 when he was no longer running the brewery.
Sure.
They were selling 35 million barrels. So
Wow.
he really took it to the next level,
That's some
opening up
growth.
all the breweries. And his marketing was just genius. I mean, the fact that he was able to sell as much beer as he did. And not only that, at that point, he was neck and neck with Old Style and Pabst Blue Ribbon.
Really?
And they were the two big beers, and it was Budweiser, Old Style, Pabst Blue Ribbon. They were all always vying
right
for
there.
first place, right? And Dad wouldn't have it. And then Schlitz came along, and Schlitz became very, very popular.
Yeah.
And Dad, the biggest thing that he did was he got on the old railroad car, the Adolphus, when they were in second place. And I always heard this story. In the 50s, Schlitz had taken over first place. Budweiser had first place and took it from Old Style and Pabst.
Yeah.
And then Schlitz took
Right.
first place over. And he got on the railroad train, and he went to every state and to every wholesaler, and he rallied the wholesalers to get back to number one. Number two was not his
Not
thing.
good enough.
He would never he would never be okay with being number two. He had to be number one, and
That's who he was.
That's who he was.
He was a
and,
people person.
and such a people person.
Yeah.
He loved people.
Yeah, and of
he
course-
would get so many great people behind him. The celebrities behind him, like Frank Sinatra, and
Yeah.
what we
Yeah.
use in social media. What do you call what you use the people
Influencers.
Influencers. Thank
Yeah,
you.
right.
In social media today, Frank Sinatra and Ed McMahon
Yeah.
and some of these
Lou
great,
Rawls.
and Lou Rawls, John Wayne, and Lou Rawls
John
too.
Wayne,
and
yeah.
John Wayne was a part of it too.
Yeah, yeah.
But there's a lot of celebrities that got behind Budweiser and helped
Yeah.
them grow it, and became the influencers.
Talk about some of the celebrities. I'm sure you met a few of them. They'd come over. Maybe your mom and dad had invited them over for dinner or whatnot. Did you have people like
Yeah,
Frank Sinatra
I remember
or
like
Dean Martin or
I never met Frank Sinatra, but I know he came over to our house
Okay.
quite a bit. I probably had to go to bed and couldn't be
Yeah,
around there when
yeah,
he showed
yeah,
up. I was
past your
too young.
bedtime.
But I remember who was there. Like for instance, Yul Brynner,
Brenner.
who starred
King and I.
in The King and I, right?
Yeah.
And he was down at the opera. What's the opera in Forest Park called?
Muni.
The Muni Opera.
Yeah.
Thank you. And he was doing The King and I
Yeah,
there.
sure.
So he came to Grant's Farm, and he was interesting character. He didn't really come out though. He stayed inside when he wasn't performing at the Muni. He stayed inside and would hardly come out. And he would come out. Finally, he came out and met Mom and Dad and some of the family members really late at night. But I remember seeing Peter Graves, Andy Williams,
Peter
Ricardo
Graves.
Montalban. A bunch of celebrities and even some political people too were at Grant's Farm, like Harry Truman. I didn't see him there, but I know he was there, and Lyndon Johnson
From Missouri. How many presidents do you think your dad met?
I think he met a lot of them.
Yeah.
I know he met Franklin Roosevelt, who ended Prohibition.
Sure.
And and he made sure that he received the first case of Budweiser.
Talk about
with
how
the
he delivered it.
Clydesdale hitch.
Yeah. Go into that.
Yeah. So my dad and his brother came up with the idea of coming up with the Clydesdales because they're Belgian, or excuse me, they're draft horses.
Sure.
And usually you didn't use the Clydesdale to pull the beer wagons to deliver beer. You used Pertrons or Belgiums to do that. But my dad saw the beauty of the Clydesdales.
Yeah, boy.
And so he made a replica of the old wagons that they used when they would pull the Budweiser cases to the different retailers. And he came up with the wagon. He came up with the dog, of course, the Dalmatian. And then he came up with all the beautiful horses, and they all had to have they call it on the legs, the white feathers.
They had to be they had to
same
have
height, beautiful
match.
Conformation, exactly.
Yeah, same coloring. They did the Rose Bowl parade in Pasadena, famous for that.
For years,
and different parades, I'm sure, all around the country, different big events. They're just what a tremendous. Marketing again, another marketing tool for the people.
What did it represent? It represented quality. It represented strength. It represented pride,
majesty.
And it became the best Super Bowl commercial ever.
Yeah.
And to this day, you can't beat the Clydesdales in the Super Bowl.
No matter what they're doing.
No matter
whether
what they're
kicking the extra point or playing with the dogs or whatever. Hard to beat.
Or a donkey trying to act like a Clydesdale. Yeah. But between that and then when August, my brother took the company over, and they came up with the frogs and Spud McKenzie and the lizards and all those things. The marketing was just they teach Anheuser-Busch marketing in colleges and schools now.
I believe it.
Because it was such great marketing.
Such a great example of what you can do with a business and how to reach people. Talk about a little bit. Let's talk about the Cardinals.
Yes.
And that was your dad's pride and joy. Loved the Cardinals. That's my memory of your dad, right? Riding around the hitch.
Right.
Either at opening day or at a World Series they happened to be in. Your dad won 3 World Series champions at the helm of the St. Louis Cardinals.
Yep.
The 70s were a little rocky, but then your father hired Whitey Herzog. And I remember the press conference at Grant's Farm when he hired him.
Oh, that's right. And Whitey was, he was a good old guy. Dad loved him because he was down to earth.
They became really close, didn't they?
They became very close. He would come in the mornings. He would go fishing at the lake at Grant's Farm then he'd bring a whole bunch of stringer of fish up to Dad, who would be having breakfast, and they would sit down. They'd talk baseball and have a beer together at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yep.
They got along so well.
Yeah.
Red Shandy's was his coach his manager during the 70s.
Sure.
And that's when Dad had this strict policy that you couldn't wear your hair long. Yeah. And, we had just come out of the 60s. Yeah. It was kind of the hippie, drug culture, right, in the 60s, and hating America because of Vietnam and all the things that were going on then. And Dad was such a patriot, He loved America. He was actually a colonel in the Army during World War II.
I'll be darned.
So he was a big patriot, and he felt that long hair represented something that wasn't very American.
Sure.
And so he made all his baseball players wear short hair.
Right.
Well, the only guy that wouldn't listen to him, there was a couple guys, but one of the guys that wouldn't listen to him was Steve Carlton.
Oh, really?
Steve Carlton.
What about Ted Simmons?
And
Teddy had really long hair, man.
You know, but that was a little later in the 70s,
Was it?
I
Okay.
think. And
He
so
kinda let him-
somehow he got away with it.
He got away with it.
Yeah,
Well,
he
he was a
got
hell
away
of a
with it.
catcher. That's probably why he got away with it.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. But
Yeah.
but if Red Shandy's in the 70s
Yeah.
could have held on to Steve Carlton, because then he ended up getting traded because he wouldn't get his hair cut.
Is that
and he
what
went
it
to
was?
the Philadelphia Phillies, and Philadelphia started winning all
Him
the...
and McCarver went.
Yeah, him
The
and
battery.
McCarver went.
Yeah, they
too.
were a tandem.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
that wasn't Dad's best move.
Yeah.
Maybe if he could have just wore his hair up under his hat or something like that.
Yeah,
But
something. Work with me, Steve.
yeah, work with me. Work with me. See, we can't lose you.
Of course, Steve Carlton he lived in St. Louis for a long time.
He did, didn't he?
A lot of people don't realize that,
Yeah.
but he, all through his years with the Phillies, which
Yep.
was a long time, he still lived here in St. Louis. And then I
But-
think he bounced around a little bit, and then he moved. But yeah.
But Whitey came in, and Dad was like, he was like, we've had this drought now. In the 60s, we did good because they went to 3 World Series and won 1 or 2
Right.
in the 60s. And then had the drought in the 70s. And then Dad knew that, he's now in the 80s. He's
like
in his 80s.
enough of this.
80 years, he's in his 80s, right?
Yeah.
So he's like, enough of this. Before I die, I want to win at least one more World Series.
Right.
So Whitey told him that he'd win a World Series. He said, "Mr. Busch, I'll win you a World Series." And they brought Whitey on, and he basically said, "Whitey, you do what it takes to win a World Series for me." And he would come over and he would tell Dad, "Okay, I'm trading Gary Templeton,
Yeah.
getting a guy in there named Ozzie Smith,
yeah.
and we're gonna have a really fast team, and we're gonna steal bases, and we're gonna run, and we're gonna play great defense, and in this big stadium here, that's kind of what we're meant to be,
Whitey
because it's
ball.
hard to hit the long ball here."
Well, he made him manager and general manager. So he called the shots. There was
did.
because a lot of people don't realize, they think the manager calls the shots in baseball.
Right.
It's not. It's the general manager.
It's the GM.
They tell you who to play, where to play him, when to play him.
Yep, exactly.
I know a guy who
It
pitched,
truly is that
pitched
way.
for the Dodgers for Tommy Lasorda, and he came in Tommy's office one time and said, "Tom," and he were kind of buddies. Mm-hmm. And he said, "Tommy, why aren't I playing?" And the guy said, "Well, when the GM comes in, can't remember his name. He says, does he ever stop by your stall and shoot the breeze with you at all or anything like that?" He goes, "Nope." He goes, "That's why you're not playing."
That's why you're not playing.
But anyway, to your
Exactly.
point,
Yeah.
Whitey wanted full reign.
Yeah, Whitey wanted
And he
full
got
reign,
it.
and he got it, and look what he did for us.
He did.
I mean, it was incredible. Those 80s were great years.
A lot
and,
of fun.
and you're right. Dad loved people. He loved to get on that wagon, during the World Series and wave that red hat
It
to
was so
everyone
cool.
and hear all
It
the
just-
cheering.
I mean,
he was
it-
in his element, man.
It would send shivers up your spine and throughout your whole body when you'd see him come out and play that Budweiser song.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you'd be ready to run through that wall.
Wouldn't you,
know what I
though?
mean? Oh,
Wouldn't you?
my gosh. So
Oh,
much
my
pride.
gosh.
So
Yeah.
much pride for you guys. I mean, it was your family, but
Yeah.
just to be a St. Louisan. And it was on national TV. And it's like, look, man, this is St. Louis.
That was St. Louis, and St. Louis at that time was thriving. We had businesses here. Anheuser-Busch was fully here,
yeah.
not one toe in here, and the rest in New York or in other parts of the world. But it was really, really amazing to see the pride and the fun it was. The Cardinals are pretty good this year. Maybe they'll make another run for it. We'll see, huh?
Your family name, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you were the first ones to have naming rights on a stadium or an arena, Busch Stadium. It was Busch Memorial, and then they
Yes.
changed it to just Busch Stadium.
Well, my dad won.
That was the first, wasn't it? Weren't they the first?
I think it could have been. All I know is Dad, when he bought the Cardinals in 1953, he bought them not because he loved baseball.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, he didn't really even know baseball. He was
Really?
riding horses,
Yeah,
or he
right.
was hunting.
He was an outdoorsman.
He was an outdoorsman. That was his thing. He bought the Cardinals because he had been to a couple games, and he knew that the Cardinal Stadium, back then it was Sportsman's
Park,
right?
yeah.
Was the biggest place for buying beer, on-premise establishment for buying beer in the whole city, right?
Sure.
and
far.
he saw that, and he saw the big Falstaff sign up on
Yeah,
on the scoreboard.
Your neighbors across
and he
the
was
way
like,
there.
God damn it. Excuse my language, but that's how he talked. He said, I need a Budweiser. I need that Falstaff sign down, and I need a Budweiser sign up there.
Yeah.
How can I get that done? I said, well, Mr. Busch, you might have to buy the Cardinals.
Yeah.
And so he ended up buying the Cardinals because he knew it would help sell beer. That was the main reason he bought the Cardinals.
From Fred Sy.
From Fred Sy.
Wow.
Exactly.
That's how it all came to be.
That's
and of
how it
course,
came to be.
again, another marketing tool.
Right.
The Cardinals.
Right.
You know?
It was incredible marketing. And then
Entertainment business.
And then when August took the company, you know, he did a great job with the company. I think he took it up to 100 million barrels, from 35, 40 million barrels up to 100 million barrels in the United States in sales.
Yeah.
And that was mainly done because of Bud Light. Bud Light was his baby.
Sure.
You know, they had... all of a sudden Miller started really coming on to Anheuser-Busch and was breathing down our throats as for the number one spot in sales. And that was strictly because of that great marketing they had, and they came up with a light beer.
Sure.
And everybody was like, you know what, keep the calories down, to lose a little weight.
Right.
Drink beer, but we're going to drink a light beer. And Miller Lite's a great beer. And then they had that great advertising. You remember the
and you
athletes?
know what's ironic about it?
Yeah.
Whitey was in a lot of those commercials for Miller Lite. And then he went to work.
Is that when he was with Kansas City?
Yeah.
No kidding.
And it was he and Dick Williams who managed the Montreal Expos. And he was in the National League, and Whitey was with the Royals. Or no, they were both in the American League. And they did that back and forth for those
I'll be darned.
light beer from Miller commercials.
I didn't know Whitey did that. Now that's
Oh,
amazing.
yeah.
That's probably the other reason Dad hired him.
And then when he that first meeting at the farm, if I said, "Now listen, big boy, you no more."
Right. I'll bet it was.
Here's the one and only beer you're going to be drinking from now on. Yes, sir, Mr.
That's the
Busch.
way it was. That's right. That's right.
Yeah, that's something. But yeah.
Yeah. But it was something, and so August the 3rd, my brother, he came up with the idea. Well, we got to come out with a light beer now.
Yeah.
So, and usually we were the innovators, you know,
Yeah.
but Miller beat us to the punch. It was actually Philip Morris back in those days, that owned Miller.
Sure.
And they beat us to the punch on the light beer. And so they took off like gangbusters. And like you said, they had that great marketing with all the athletes and coaches and things. And so August said, we're going to come up with a light beer and call it Natural Light.
Yeah.
And so they came up with Natural Light, and Natural Light couldn't touch Miller Light.
Yeah.
Then they came up with Budweiser Light.
Sure.
And that didn't work.
Right.
And then they decided to change the name from Budweiser to Bud Light, and it took off. So that was the end of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Talk a little bit. You just brought up your brother August. Talk about, if you don't mind, that transition when your brother took over, and what that was like. Your dad was getting up in years a little bit, and how did that? Talk a little bit about that.
Well,
you talk about it in your book.
We've been talking about all the sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah.
But there wasn't always sunshine and rainbows.
With all families.
Like any family,
With all families.
You go through your difficult times, and so one of the difficult times, it was in the mid '70s. My little sister was killed in a car accident,
Christina.
along with the chauffeur, Nathan. My younger brother Andy was in the car with them. Thank God he was thrown out of the car. And he wasn't really hurt, and he survived. But Christina and the chauffeur, Christina died about 10 days after the accident. She was in a coma and never came out of it. Yeah. And the chauffeur was killed immediately. And I was driving home from school on 270 there. Yeah. And so Dad, this was his honeybee. This was his youngest of 11. His little baby. She was 8 years old.
She had a way with your dad, didn't she?
She had such a way with Dad. She had his heartstrings.
Yeah, he
man.
couldn't.
Yeah, I mean,
done.
Exactly, done. Whatever you want. Whatever you want, honeybee. He would call her honeybee. And it was just they had a great relationship, and it kept Dad young. I mean,
she was a little girl.
In 1974, Dad was 75 years old, but he was still young, and he was running the company, and he was. Him and Mom were getting along, and they were doing great things. Things were going very
entertaining
thriving,
at the house,
all the entertaining. And it was just an amazing time. One of the parties was Camelot. You alluded to that earlier.
Yeah, sure.
The big Camelot party
Yeah.
at Grant's Farm that they had together. That's when Andy Williams and
Yep.
some of the other entertainers came
man, Andy Williams.
to Grant's Farm. But Camelot was a big thing that actually Jackie Kennedy
Right.
was started.
Sure.
Started or brought
Well,
over
that's
here
what
to
they
America.
talked about.
I think it
Yeah,
started.
with the Kennedys. yeah.
Exactly. So she was killed in that accident, and it sent Dad down and spiraling. I mean, it really affected him hard, and Dad was very upset, very sad, and it gave and my brother August. I guess he felt that there was a chance because there was a gentleman by the name of Dick Meyer that Dad made president of Anheuser-Busch.
Sure.
Okay, it was the first time there was a non-family member president at Anheuser-Busch.
Okay.
And August thought that should have come to him.
Okay.
Even though he was only like 30 years old,
He was
or 30,
young.
33
Yeah,
years old,
yeah.
he thought that should have been him, but Dad didn't feel that he
wasn't ready yet.
He wasn't ready
Okay.
for it. So it didn't go to him, and I think that made him even more insecure, August.
Yeah.
So he saw a period there where Dad was slipping a little bit because of what happened to his
Sure.
his
Oh, my
daughter.
God, it devastated.
And he went to the board and he formed a coup. And a
Right.
lot of these board members were family members, you know,
Well,
that,
sure.
that were part of the family.
Right.
And they all went against Dad.
Yeah.
And they voted Dad out, and they voted August in to run the company.
Yeah.
And then we had to take sides. So my side of the family, from our mother, us 7 kids, we went with Dad and Mom.
Sure.
And you know, the board and everyone else pretty much went with August.
Yeah.
And so Dad was livid. You know, he was like, "You can't do that. That son of a gun can't take it from me. You know,
Yeah,
who the
right.
hell's he
Well,
think
sure,
he
he's
is?"
upset.
And Dad and my mom and him were fighting because my mom was actually stronger than Dad during that time with
she was
Christina.
tough. She was a
and
rock.
She was like, you know, you've got 6 other kids. You're losing the company because you need to get over this
Yeah.
now. And let's go, God damn it!
Let's
you know,
get
get your act
kick it in
together.
gear, will you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so Dad called us boys together, and he said, "I want you to go meet with that August, and and have a talk with him.
Yeah, talk
And if
about
you
that.
have to,
Tell that story.
yeah, if you." He looked at me because I think I was 15 years old, but I was probably the strongest of all the brothers at the time.
Well, you started working out and stuff. You were
Exactly.
playing football and all that kind
Exactly.
of stuff in high school.
Exactly.
Yeah, go ahead.
So he said, and he looked at me and he said, "And you suck. I'm right in the pussy." I go, "All right."
He wanted
Dad."
you to crack him.
Yeah, he wanted me to crack him. So it was, and it's talked about in all the books that were written about us.
But even though Adolphus was the oldest.
Yeah, even though Adolphus
How
was
many
the
years older was he than you?
He's 6 years older.
yeah.
Than
So,
me.
but your dad's like, yeah, you big boy, you go.
Yeah, exactly. But Adolphus is also being groomed to be a big
He was
part
his
of
oldest of your
Anheuser-Busch.
family, sure.
And he was the oldest in my family, and so Mom was upset at Dad now because he wasn't pulling it together,
Right.
And also because he was losing the company, and he knew, and she knew that if he lost the company,
Yeah.
well then Adolphus and maybe the other sons would never have a
not.
chance to
Sure.
go anywhere inside the company. And Mom, you know, like
Understandably
any
so.
mom would want
yeah.
wanted all the boys that
Absolutely.
wanted to be,
Sure.
and even the girls, but it was more about the
Girls,
boys then.
yep.
But wanted all the boys to be a part of the company if the boys chose to do that, if we chose to do that. So we had the big not shootout, but the big come to
Yeah.
Jesus
Yeah.
moment at
Yeah.
the border of our properties. So our property
Bellow
bordered his
Farm
property
and
Waldmeister.
Waldmeister?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we went there thinking, you know, this could turn into a gunfight, and we don't know what's going to happen. But you know what, Joe? Maybe I ought to let the
It's a
people
neat
read
story.
the book,
Yeah, read the
and
book.
see what happened from there.
It really is kind
It's-
of a cool story.
It is kind
really
of a cool.
is.
I mean, I didn't know if we were gonna, you know,
Yeah.
throw a rope around him
Yeah,
and
man.
drag him from behind a jeep, or what we were gonna do. But
Yeah.
but it turned out where you know, we came together and we talked, and
Yeah.
you know, and he gave his side of the story, and we're kind of scratching our heads like, what do we do? So we
Yeah,
just left.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and it probably gave you a glimpse into August as to what type of a leader he was.
Yep.
Because he was very calm.
He was at
Chose
that
his
point.
words.
He was
his
at that
words
time. Yep.
wisely in the way
did.
he communicated with you guys.
He did.
Which was a good thing.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah, I would say you're right. I mean, he was ruthless as a leader.
Yeah.
He'd fire you, or
He was tough.
He'd let you know if
Yeah.
you weren't doing it the way
I've
it
heard.
needed to be done. But
Yeah.
but he could be. But people respected him. I
Sure.
will say he gained
That's
people's
right.
respect.
Yeah.
And as a speaker, when he went out and gave presentations or he spoke at wholesaler meetings, he was amazing. He was
Yeah.
an incredible speaker, and I have to hand, you got to give credit where credit's due.
Yeah.
Even though I never got close to him after that,
Sure.
And I had a very difficult time swallowing that pill for taking the company from our father the way
your
he
family.
did. I think there would have been other ways of doing it.
Right.
But he was a hard-nosed guy, and he liked to drive hard, man. And he wasn't going to leave anything for chance. And if he could take it, he was going to do it. And that's just what he did.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's all water under the bridge. But
Yeah.
I want to go back to that tragic traffic accident.
Yep.
Nathan, who was your chauffeur, he was your best friend, wasn't he? He was.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
was. You would think it'd be, normally it's like some kid down the street or somebody in school is your best buddy or whatever, but you were with Nathan so much because he was your chauffeur.
Yeah, he was our
drove you
chauffeur.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Talk about Nathan.
Nathan helped me out a lot. Nathan was from the hood.
Yeah.
Old Frank, who was my dad's valet, would tell me,
Okay.
Nathan's from the hood. You don't want to mess with Nathan
mess-
because he'll kick your ass.
Yeah.
And I respected him, and he respected me, and he respected our whole family, and we
Sure.
were all together a lot.
Yeah.
So
you were with him all the time.
Yeah, with him all the time. So he would drive me to he would drive us to school.
Sure.
And I was going to Priory, and then so he would sometimes pick me up later,
Right.
Or he would pick me up early. So we had a lot of one-on-one time.
Yeah.
Or he would drive me to school or later or earlier.
Right.
And I'd see him there at Grant's farm, and we would always be talking. But he'd always tell me, "Billy, you're my favorite. You're my favorite of all the kids." And I was thinking, I'm sure you'd tell that to everybody. Nathan.
you
But
tell it to
okay,
all the
that's
kids.
cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. But we became very close, and we'd go out and we'd play ball together. And I was just getting into football then.
Yeah.
And he'd come to my football games.
Did he really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was always interested. Dad didn't come to any of the football games.
Yeah.
He came to one football game, I think,
Yeah.
it lasted about 5 minutes. I tell that story in the book too. But Nathan, he'd help me with football and sports and all that. He talked to me about how to, behave. And, I remember one time I didn't say good morning to him. I walked by him. Uh-oh. And later on, he wouldn't talk to me. I said, "What's the matter, Nathan?" He goes, "You know goddamn good and well what's the matter. You didn't say good morning. You just walked by me like you couldn't say good morning." And from then on, I always said good morning to people.
Yeah.
I would never walk by
Yeah.
somebody and not
Say
acknowledge
hello
them.
or-
Hey,
yeah.
say hello or something.
Now, you go-
But wasn't that great advice?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
to your point, I think it was a butler that whenever that got upset that whenever Whitey Herzog would come in, he wouldn't acknowledge him or something.
Yeah, that was Frank, and Frank worked
It
for
was
Dad.
Frank.
Yeah, Frank
Yeah.
worked for Dad for like 45, 50 years, something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
He was Dad's valet, and they did everything together. They
Sure.
traveled together. They did
Like you and Nathan.
like Nathan and I, and Frank was kind of opinionated. He'd tell you like it is.
Yeah.
One day he told me, he goes, I asked him, I said, "Isn't that Whitey Herzog? Isn't he a hell of a manager?" He goes, "Screw Whitey Herzog." I said, "Why is that, Frank?" He said, "That son of a gun comes walking in here in the
Every
morning.
morning.
He walks right by
Like
me.
I'm not even here.
He can't even say hello." And he said, "He's so damn arrogant." And Whitey was a little like that, honestly.
Yeah, he was.
He did have a little arrogance to
Yeah,
him.
he did.
He was a down-home guy, but I
Yeah.
could kind of see that in him too.
A little bit.
Because he kind of walked by me, and I was young, but he
Yeah, yeah.
walked by me a few times too,
Yeah,
and like
yeah.
beelining it to Dad.
Yeah, sure.
But
sure.
Jack Buck.
Sure, I knew Jack real well.
I could not see him for 2 or 3 years. He'd
Oh,
be
yeah.
like, "Hey, Billy, how are you?"
Yeah.
He would remember my name, and he was just an amazing guy.
Yeah.
And those kind of people I always respected. But people that walk by you like that, you got to wonder a little bit if you know what their
what
mindset
goes on in between their two ears.
Exactly.
Like, what do you? Yeah,
Exactly.
you know, you talk about Jack Buck, and you and I kind of had similar relationships with the Cardinals and Busch Stadium and all that. When Dad owned Mike Shannon's restaurant, I became close with Mike and got
What a
to know
great guy,
Jack
Mike,
Buck.
yeah.
But you're right about Jack Buck. He would
Yeah.
always acknowledge you, you know, and say,
Wouldn't he? And how did he
How's
remember
your golf
everybody's
game?
name?
How you doing? Go in and see your buddy.
That sounds
He would talk like, and that was when Joe was working. 'Cause
Yeah.
Joe and I were buddies. We kind of grew up together a little bit.
Did you?
And would hang out at the ballpark when we were kids and run around with. It was me, him, and Danny Shannon, and
Yep.
we go around and everything else. But this is when Joe started working with the Cardinals, and then,
Mm-hmm.
of course we know what happened after that. He went on, but Jack was always so good about that, so great. No matter who you were,
No matter who
he
you
would
were,
say
that's
hi
the
to
way
you,
it
and
was.
yeah,
Yeah.
ask you how, not just say hi to you, but ask about what's going on in your life.
Right,
You know?
right.
So anyway,
and it was just amazing how you could remember that, because then everybody you'd see him and he'd talk to everybody,
Yeah.
and he knew something about everybody.
Yeah.
and it's just I don't know if that's a gift or you learn how to
Yeah.
remember all that.
Yeah.
I try to do that all the time. Tom,
yeah,
I'm trying
you
to
try.
do that.
Yeah, yeah, you try. But no,
Call you Tom.
but Jack Buck, was, you know,
No, phenomenal.
and I would see it. It wasn't just.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be already in the booth. And
Do you
I'd
know
go,
how lucky
"Hey,
we were? If you
to be able to do
back-
that, you know, and like you,
Yeah.
got to go down in the locker room, and you
Yep.
know, my buddy was the bullpen catcher at the time, and
Right.
that I grew up with, and I knew Rip Rowan and Buddy Bates and
Oh, sure.
all those guys, Kurt Schlegel, and
Yeah.
all the guys down there, yeah,
Wasn't
just
it much more approachable back
Oh
then?
yeah,
Compared
yeah.
to what it is today, now it's such a business to me. But,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
back
And then-
back then it was supposed to be about making friends is our business, and
That's
that was
right.
what Anheuser-Busch lived.
And not
on.
everybody got to do that, of course.
No,
but,
not everybody did, but it was always approachable to people.
Yeah.
Always felt a part of it.
And of course, when your brother sold the Cardinals, man, I'm gonna tell you something. Everything changed, brother.
Yeah.
I mean, they wouldn't let you up in the I mean, I couldn't be in the locker room.
Yep,
Yep.
That was the
yeah,
end
I
of
got
all
the tap
that.
on the shoulder. I think it was Rip Rowan. He says, "Hey, man, you got to leave." I said, "What do you mean I got to leave?"
Yeah.
He goes, "Yeah, you can't be down here anymore." I said,
Yeah.
"Okay."
I know.
That was the end of that. But yeah,
Times changed,
when
man.
your dad had it,
Yeah.
your family had it, it was a whole different ballgame.
No, but looking back at it, if you think about the fun we had and the people that we got to know,
Got
and,
to meet.
and how approachable they were. I was talking about approachability, and Mike Shannon and Jack Buck were like that. And what great announcers, when you think of Harry Carey, you go all the way back to Harry Carey. And I remember going to the parties, and Harry would be there, and he was
Yeah.
always fun at the parties,
Oh,
always
yeah.
having, he loved to drink, and he loved to tell stories, and
Yeah.
loved to, be the life of the party. Old
Yeah,
Harry
yeah,
was
yeah.
that way, and Jack learned a lot under Harry, I'm sure.
Just like Mike,
And then Harry
Mike
screwed
learned a
up.
lot after
Harry screwed
Jack.
up and had an affair with my brother's wife, and so they ran
was
him
the
out
end
of
of
town. Dang it, Harry! He was such a good guy.
They sent him to Chicago.
I know they
but,
sent him to Chicago.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh shoot! But the announcing was so good, and it's still pretty good today. To me, it's not like it used to be.
No,
but
no.
It's still really good.
But there's a lot of great announcers that come out through the baseball team.
Yeah.
You know, you got Bob Costas.
Oh,
you
yeah.
got Joe Buck.
Yeah.
Who came
Amazing.
up and God love him. His dad gave him, but let me tell you, the kid was good.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't care what anybody
That
says.
guy's great.
Once he got it, but he proved himself.
Yeah.
And he was, Joe's tremendous.
Joe is tremendous.
Fantastic.
He does a great job. And then you think about the players back then, that we had too, and they were such great guys. Whether it was Lou Brock.
Who was your favorite player
Lou
when
Brock,
you were
I
going?
think.
It was Lou.
I think Lou was
Yeah.
what was my favorite. I really like that guy. I like Jack Clark a lot.
Yeah, Jack.
But Lou Brock, he'd always remember me.
Yeah,
Always
sure.
remember the name, and always like, hey,
Billy.
I'd say, hey, would you sign this baseball? He wouldn't have a problem with it.
Yeah, yeah.
Now there were a few ball players that didn't like to sign the baseballs. Like Mark McGwire, he'd get a little iffy about doing that.
No, he
sometimes,
didn't like.
too.
I remember a story when I was bumming with all them guys, and they said one time another team sent a laundry basket, and I'm not talking what we have at home. I'm talking about a big bin that they throw all the jerseys and
Yep.
everything, uniforms in. They sent it down full of bats and balls and stuff for him to sign. He
Yep.
said, "Nah, I ain't signing that stuff."
I ain't signing that. No way.
Mark said, "I don't want, you know." But but there's some people were better about it than others.
Right.
I remember a story with Pete Rose
Mm-hmm.
when he was in the restaurant one time. It was about 2:00, not a lot of people there, and he was managing the Reds at the time. He was sitting in a booth,
2 in the morning.
2 in the afternoon.
Oh, in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he was having a late lunch, and some gentleman came up to him. My dad and I were both down there at the time. I don't know why we were there at 2:00 in the afternoon, but we were there, and this gentleman approached him and asked him for his autograph while he was eating.
Okay.
Big mistake.
Really?
Oh,
He let him have it.
He let this guy have it like you can't believe. I
Really?
mean, we wanted to dive underneath the table. We felt so bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he that was kind of an incident. But
I
some,
always
just
I
some
always
some
heard
guys
he,
are better than others.
He had a little bit of that
An edge.
to him, an edge to
Yeah.
him, yeah, like that. That he a little bit of arrogance,
Yeah.
in that respect.
Yeah.
What a ball player he was.
Yeah.
Man, amazing guy.
I hope he goes into the Hall of Fame, man.
Aren't they talking about putting him in the?
I think
or
so
letting
now.
him-
It's a shame. that
Pardoning
they-
him.
It's a shame now that
He won't
they
know
said
it.
it was a lifetime ban.
Yeah.
He's no longer alive, so I guess
Right.
they can leave. But it's a shame that they didn't do it when he was still alive.
I know.
I mean,
I know for what he contributed
on.
to the game of baseball, just amazing.
tremendous.
Yeah.
But back to the Cardinals. You were a
Yes.
Lou Brock guy. I was, of course, you knew Lou. Mine was Ted Simmons.
And Ted
Never got to
Simmons.
meet Ted, but
Ted used to
he
stay
was
at
my
Grant's
favorite
Farm
player.
at our house with us.
Did he really?
And he'd have
Yeah.
dinner with us, and he was
Yeah.
he was, you would have loved him.
Laid back.
Great guy, laid back. He talked about
Simba.
everything. Simba, exactly. And I remember going to school in the morning, and he'd be out running around the lake, jogging around
Really?
the lake. Yeah, because he'd come and say, did he live in California or something? And then he would
For a
come to St. Louis right before spring training, and he stayed with us at Grant's Farm for a few years, right before.
So he
spring
didn't live
training.
in St.
And
Louis
he
right
would
away.
Jog around the lake. There.
Really?
No, I don't think he lived here.
So then he moved.
Maybe during the season he
had a
rented
place
house
here, I'm sure,
or
yeah.
something like that. But
Okay.
but yeah, but he was a great guy.
Yeah.
Really good guy. He's right up there in my top 3
Yeah.
of the Cardinals. Yeah,
Glad he got into the Hall of Fame.
yeah,
He deserves
me
it.
too.
You know.
And I saw him at opening day.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching it on TV, and I saw him, and he looks great.
Yeah.
He
Oh,
looked
yeah.
really good.
Trimmed down.
Yeah.
Still got that mane.
He sure
if you
got
will.
that
That's
mane.
why that's why they call him Simba. Look, he had like a lion's mane.
That's
coming
right.
out. But yeah.
Who
But-
else? Kurt Flood.
Oh gosh.
You remember Kurt Flood? He was.
I remember Kurt Flood.
He was a great painter. He painted all of our portraits, all my dad's kids' portraits,
Really?
including me. Yeah.
He was a painter.
He was a painter. He was really a heck of a painter.
I'll
yeah.
be darned.
So yeah, he painted all our portraits.
I did not know that about him.
Yeah.
Wow. He was.
Yep. He was with the Cardinals when they
multifaceted.
won the '64 World Series, I
Yep.
think, and maybe the '67 World Series.
Brought
Yeah.
about free agency in baseball.
Yeah, brought about
Yeah.
that.
Yep.
That's for sure.
And then, of course, Mike Shannon was a great
Oh yeah.
friend of your dad. Your
Yeah.
dad loved Mike Shannon.
Oh, for sure. And Mike Shannon's in my top 3 or 4 also. Yeah, he was a great guy.
guy.
Yep.
Great guy.
He used to sit up and talk baseball with him at night, and we could go on for hours.
Yeah.
Yep.
Tune in next week for part 2 with Billy Busch. The Supper Club brought to you by
Mercy, transforming the health of our communities. Kuna Food Service, a family-owned tradition since 1918. Lordo's Diamonds, your family jeweler for life.
Oliva on the Hill. Fresca Limoncello. Keep sipping, my friends.
Ackerman Toyota, the #1 St. Louis Toyota dealer in volume sales back-to-back years 2023 and 2024. Thank you, St. Louis.